great honor for us. It's a great honor for us to invite you as keynote speaker at ROST Fifth International Congress. We are close friends for some years, and I was always inspired by your ideas and by your presentations. So I want to present Wojciech Marchwica. He has been a lecturer at Jagiellonian University, Institute of Musicology, Poland. He's not only musicologist, but a literary expert, cultural manager. He's guest professor in Kiev, Lvov, Berlin, and other locations. Currently, he holds the position of professor at the Institute of Musicology and chief of the Center of Research on Music Multimediality at Jagiellonian University. Regardless of his academic activities, he has performed numerous functions as a cultural manager. He is the co-founder of Polish Early Music Society and co-owner of the renewed Muzyka Jagiellonica publishing house, if I'm pronouncing this name correctly. So currently he is scientifically involved in Polish musical culture and problems of music and film. So microphone is yours. We can start. You can share a presentation if you have.
Thank you very much, Gwanza, for such a nice introduction. I think that I will be continuing the discussion about the music in Soviet time, or rather post-Soviet time or inter-Soviet time, which is not my best and the first point of interest, because mainly I am interested in 18th century, but I think there are some elements which can be found the same in past time and in our time, so it can be, I think, interesting for you. Let me show the presentation. It's hidden somewhere. Okay, I hope you see the presentation. Yep. Fine. If anything will be not fully understand, or I don't know, technically, or because of the matter of I would like to talk, please let me know, shout, or I don't know, raise the hand. Zoom gives different opportunities how to stop the speaker. Okay, rock music in Poland in the 1980s. I'd like to start with the reminder why these 80s are so important. Everybody knows that the Great Revolution was 89, but in Poland it started much earlier, and this 80s, it's something which is a very important time in Polish culture. Why doesn't it work? Yeah. So, maybe you know such a joke. In Poland, we have such a joke that during Soviet time, the Polish barrack was always the most funny, was always this barrack which could be laughed and joyful. Maybe it was not so joyful. I remember this time as a very great time, but still, we had more freedom than many our neighbors and many other countries belonging to the Warsaw Pact. Coming back to 56, there was a short break after the Stalin's death when the Warsaw Autumn Festival appeared. And the Warsaw Autumn, I think it's well known for everybody who is dealing with contemporary music, because it was a kind of window for many socialistic countries to show their production, and also to meet our friends, our colleagues from Western Europe. They could come to Warsaw, but they couldn't come to Berlin, for example. They couldn't come to Prague. They could come to Warsaw. And for 2 weeks, there was a very intensive time for exchanging ideas, exchanging scores, recording from West. It was something incredible, something which could not be found in any shop in Warsaw or in other countries of the Warsaw Pact. So that was also a time which was very short. It was only about 2 years, that we could face this culture, we could just start to acquire Western culture. But as Polish people remember it very well, it was a short time. In 68, there was two waves of the great demonstration, protest, street protest. You have the ideas of the very famous photo. Pay attention for this photo. Here you have the policeman or miliceman with weapon, but here you have the people who are undressed. They are dressed like regular people. No, they are also police. They are also police and they are beating people walking on the street. That was a symptom of this time. The government used not only the police forces, militia forces, but also the secret militia forces to struggle against people, against especially intellectuals, also against the Jewish part of something that could be perceived as Jewish part of the Polish society. It was a great emigration wave and so on. So there were so-called anti-Zionist rallies, and there was also different students' protests. Very shortly afterwards, in 70, in December 1970, there was a mass increase of prices for very basic things, for bread, for eggs, for food mostly. At the same time, the steam machines were cheaper. That was something that was intended to peace Polish society. It didn't, of course. And that was a time when Edward Gierek replaced the first secretary Gomułka. Gierek was a very special person because he had an episode of staying in Belgium and France, was speaking French, what was not very typical for first secretaries, and he promised a better life. And of course, this better life was only a promise because it finished like this. You see the lines of the, once again, militia forced against people with heavy machines. I'm talking about the trucks, about the special trucks to use gas, to use water, and so on and so on. Probably you have the same pictures in every country connected with the Soviet. Then this Gierek era was about 10 years, but this Gierek era was finished very unpleasant for Stalinist government, because at first in 76 there were two very special things. You see this picture, there was the first coupon for sugar. Very soon we had same coupons for different food. There were shortage of food, shortage of sugar, shortage of everything. And the second, in 78, the Archbishop of Krakow, Cardinal Karol Wojtyła, was elected Pope. And the Pope, of course, it was a very special thing for such a Catholic country like Poland. He became John Paul II, and very shortly he wanted to come to Poland. And that was the first break, the first hole in Berlin Wall, which symbolized the wall between East and West. In June, there was the first papal tour in Poland, when on one place in Krakow, it gathered over 1 million people. According to some calculation, it was 1,200,000. And he said something people believed: do not afraid, nie bójcie się, do not afraid. And everybody remember this, and people really start not to be afraid. Very shortly afterwards, there was solidarity, solidarność. You see the symbol of solidarity, which is well known in all past communistic countries. But it was a short time of the hope, because in December 81 till 83, General Jaruzelski proclaimed martial law. Martial law meant that nothing was possible to be done. It was cut off of everything, cut off of information, cut off of selling, cut off of freedom, cut off of education, free education. Many universities were closed or somehow frozen. He suspended also solidarity and imprisoned most of leaders. This imprisoned person without any proclamation, without anything, only because of the signature of Jaruzelski or his officers, as were thousands of people. And Solidarity became the underground organization from one day to another. And that is this very famous photo of 1,000,000 people waiting for Pope. And that was the last great gathering like this. Since that time, never in Poland we had 1,200,000 people gathered in one place. In 80s, during Jaruzelski regime, it was not possible to do anything like hope, like democracy, everything was forbidden. But in 1988, we started something which is called Okrągły Stół, the round table. You see here on this picture the very symbolic round table. There was the first time in post-socialistic countries where people of different action, different fractions, different sides of the political conflict were gathered together, and they've been talking for, depending how to do, almost 2 months they were talking. There were 94 sessions. And they started to have something called the new version of democracy in Poland. At the same time, there was a very busy and very hot time throughout the world. I remind to you the Tiananmen massacre. The massacre we don't remember now. We are looking at China as a great country. Of course, they are great. They have a lot of money, but we shouldn't forget about what happened to students at the Tiananmen Square. In June 1989, there was the first election in Poland, which was partly free. It was said that the maximum percentage of solidarity which can take in the parliament, it's 35%. And they did, exactly 35%. In Senate, which is the higher chamber of the parliament, 99%, 99 senators were senators of the solidarity fraction. At the same time, we had the same actions or the same kind of actions in many other countries. I think you can easily find the countries and the actions which have been done in Czech, in Slovakia, in the DDR. But here there's a photo taken in, that's exactly from Lithuania. They call it Baltic Way, the Baltic chain sometimes. There were thousands of people, some says 2,000,000 people who formed the chain through all these three countries, Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia. That's about 600 kilometers to show their ability to gather together and to be one party against the Soviet regime. And in November the same year, there was a symbolic fall of the Berlin Wall, which was the symbol of Soviet regime in Central Europe. I think you know these photos. These photos were very famous. It happened in few days, but in these few days, few days, there was only the end of action. Before, there were thousands of people who have been struggling, who have been imprisoned, who have been beaten, some people who have been killed, to allow destroy Berlin Wall. The end of the Soviet regime is very easy, and these dates you probably know. January 1909, Polish Communist Party was disbanded. In March, there was the act of re-establishment of the state of Lithuania. Very soon, other Baltic countries and other countries. In December 1990, Lech Wałęsa, who was a symbol of the struggle against communism, was elected as a president. And in July 91, the Warsaw Pact was dissolved, officially dissolved. It was the starting of process of sending Soviet troops back to Soviet Union, but very shortly it was not Soviet Union again, it was only Russia. And because in December, Soviet Union ceased to exist officially. That is a very important photo. It was agreement signed in Viskule on 8th of December 91. The different leaders of different countries are signing the act of dissolving Soviet unions. There were republics of Soviet Union, including Ukraine, including Belarus, including other countries. Okay, so I think that was a background. Now we can go to the special situation of culture in Poland. In Poland, we have a very special situation because there were so-called three circuits of culture in our country. The first circle, there was a same circle which exists in every communist country. There was the official culture. It was officially spread through the mass media, through different newspapers. Here is the Polish communist newspapers, Tribuna Ludu. In Czech, it was Rude Prawo. In Germany, it was, I don't remember at the moment the name. They were very famous. There was so-called dominant culture. Dominant culture, it means that the culture should be somehow connected with official policy. It couldn't be done outside of official policy, and it was fully controlled by censorship. And again, that is something you know very well. I will not talk later, but a few words about this picture. That's a picture of the only company which was publishing the CDs, no, it's not CDs, the black discs, long plays that time. There was a company established in 1956, and they were Musa. There was the only one which could produce long plays. The same like, for example, Supraphon in Czech or Eterna in East Deutschland, East German. The first circle was well paid. There were people, journalists, artists who have been well paid. They have money to organize concerts. They have money to organize exhibitions, and so on and so on. The second circuit, on the second circulation, there was a circulation prepared by the opposition. This opposition which appeared in Poland after 1970s. They were, of course, concentrated mainly on writing about the future, writing about the possible changes, how we should establish the new country, and so on and so on and so on. The culture is not the dominant part of this second circulation, but there were. Why? Because, for example, there was a very typical and very popular to sing songs on popular melodies, which was the caricature of different texts against Soviet officers, Soviet stupidities, and so on and so on. That was a very important element because people who are laughing at something, they don't afraid of this. So we had a lot of jokes about the stupidity of Soviets, about the stupidity of communists, and so on and so on. Of course, it was not so good. Still, there were prisons. Still, there were people who have been beat, who have been in prison without any possible. There were also some symbols. These maybe you don't see, but there's a photo of the priest. It is Mr. Popiełuszko, priest Popiełuszko, who was killed by the officers of the Soviet secret police in Poland. Actually, he was one of more or less about 55 persons who were killed that time, as we know it now. Information which was circled in this second circulation was information concerning what's going on, who was in prison, how can we help them, information about the founding money, and so on and so on and so on. Of course, all newspapers in the Second Circuit was illegally published by a group of people. At the very beginning, they were very poor, very simple. Later, after we got the money from the Western foundations, from American foundations, it was a time when America helped Polish underground opposition very strongly. The quality of this Second Circuit was better. And Third Circuit. And the Third Circuit is something which is very strange, because that was a circuit which was not noticed by official government. Why? Because there were a very small group of different cultures, mostly punk or punk rock cultures, small groups without any structure, without any political demands, without any political understanding of anti-Soviet regime. No, they were understood as people who want to have a good fun. So the government didn't notice them. The censorship didn't know them. There was a kind of subculture. But the spreading information from England, from France to Poland was easier through radio, through different sending the newspapers, books, and so on. And year by year, this group, this third circulation was stronger. And very soon, the young people noticed that it's necessary to do something to act against the Soviet understanding of culture, because this culture is strongly stupid and doesn't give any good effect for future. The first level was lyrics. Lyrics, very often typical for the lyrics of the punk or punk rock culture, for example, in England. So I am against of everything. I'm against about for political class. I'm against my parents. I'm against the school. I'm against everything. But the second, there was also a great action of making of illegal copies of different recordings. That is a time when audio cassettes appeared. Audio cassettes were very easy to copy. Also, it was very easy to make handmade newspapers. This was a wave, like ocean wave. And still it was ignored by official militia and censorship, because they didn't see anything political in this. They were wrong. Look, there are typical examples of this third circle. Homemade publication. Sometimes they were connected with a very vulgar text, but sometimes that was also talking about better future. And this better future was, and that's the very important term, could not be invented without freedom. And when freedom appeared as the dogma of the Third Circuit, immediately Polish censorship started to think about it. It was too late. The young people were strong, and they have different levels, different paths of sending information, copying information. So there was also one very important thing. It was a Jarocin festival. Jarocin festival, which was first time organized in 1970s. It's funny, but the money for first Jarocin festival were money given from Communist Party for youth activities. They didn't notice these activities are completely not for them, against them. But the first time when Yarochin texts were sent to censorship was in 83. So for 13 years, nobody noticed. That is a strong part of the Polish country. Of course, there was a freedom of artistic expression, freedom of behavior, clothing, hairstyles. So that was all positive elements. There were also negative elements. For example, this culture was limited to a specific generation, only young people. And of course, there was anarchy as their god, as their first understanding of freedom. So first to destroy, and then we will see. It's possible, but you know, anarchists started to work in 19th century and still now, and till Trump version of anarchy, nothing has changed. Okay, let's go to music finally. The new wave, there was a new wave of everything, new wave of clothing, new wave of publishing, new wave of talking, new wave of songs, of course. There was, of course, growing generation conflict, but also there was a dream for better life. And if the young people want to have a better life, it means we must destroy the life which is current one. And the current one was a communist time. So that was why this new wave was so strongly connected with the Third Circuit. First example. The example which was partially official music. Korea Jackowska was a great artist, very well educated and very dynamic artist. And in 1980s, she recorded a song Buenos Aires. Buenos Aires, which was well known in many countries. It's not about politics. It's about that in Buenos Aires, it's nice to be in Buenos Aires. Because in Buenos Aires, we are happy. Okay, but in socialistic countries, nobody can be happy outside of the Warsaw Pact. And officially, the leader of this, not the leader, the subject of this song was Gladys. The Gladys was a journalist, existing journalist. There were different gossips that she was connected, that she was going anti-communist. She was not. Anyway, this Gladys was not very wise person, and she was answering in a very stupid way. And that text, which was without a sense, with music, which is very simple, showed people the path where to go. Let's listen. Here you have the text. A warm welcome, dear journalists. Before I tell you in my plans, my name is Gladys del Carmen Laturello Gladys Semiramis. Even the name was something very special. I want to travel to Europe once more, or even farther to Buenos Aires. Okay, what does it mean for censor? It means what? She or he want to escape from Poland, yeah? And very soon, this song was on the list of censors. Look also on the video part of this, one of the first Polish video for music. It's full of colors. It's so different for the reality in this time. It is not gray. It's not well done. It's everything very active, very dynamic. Do you listen? Okay?
Serdecznie witam, panie dziennikarzu. Zanim opowiem panu o swych planach, na imię mam Gledys del Carmen, Latarullo, Gledys Semiramis. Chcę jeszcze raz pojechać do Europy lub jeszcze dalej do Buenos Aires. Więcej się można nauczyć podróżując. Podróżować jest bosko. Ciągle pan pyta, co sądzę o mężczyznach. O proszę pana, jaki pan jest ciekawski. Naturalnie myślę o mężczyznach. Ale teraz muszę jechać do Buenos Aires. Kiedy wybrali mnie syreną morza, zaprosili mnie do pierwszej klasy. Częstowali mnie szampanem. Ja uwielbiam szampana. Buenos Aires.
Okay, the last text you hear was I love the champagne in Buenos Aires. That was nothing political. That was nothing special. But in that time, there was a manifest to act against the current political situation. And young people treated this song exactly like this. Okay. So I don't want to discuss all these details about the Gladys, whose real name was Carmen Marin Mille. She died in 2005, but she was the secretary of Communist Party. So strange situation. Even the most the prophet could not forecast that this song will make such a great influence, not only in Poland, because Kora was also popular in other countries. And now song, which was a kind of the generation manifest. It was a song sung by an officially recognized group named Perfect. Perfect in Polish is exactly like in English. Perfect, doskonały. That is a song of 1981. We want to be ourselves. Have a look at the text. I'd like to be myself. I'd like to be myself. I'd like to be myself. And repeating 100 times. Like every morning, I butter roll, I sip a coffee and newspapers. And he, because it was he, how this, he's telling about the everyday actions, what I'm doing after waking up. I'm having coffee, I'm eating, reading newspaper, nothing special. But this situation, this picture shows something which is the starting point. And then it comes refrain. And the refrain, it's going back and back and back again with the text. We want, first, I want to be myself, and then we want to be ourselves. This perfect song was known by everybody in Poland. Even if somebody was not a lover of the rock music, firstly, for first months, it was sung in radio, even in television. Then when the censor noticed what it's about and what is the action, they stopped it, but it was too late again. It was too late. And that was one of the first manifest of the generation of 1980s, generation of people who are against. There is text which is repeating all the time. Finally, the vocalist sings, "We want to be ourselves." Finally, in Polish, nareszcie. So it's a kind of process. We start with this butter roll and then coffee, and then we want to be ourselves. We don't want to be binded with regulations of the Soviet regime. And a kind of anecdote. In Polish, this text sounds chcemy być sobą, chcemy być sobą, chcemy być sobą, and so on and so on and so on. And what did people sing? When the singer was singing Chcemy być sobą, the crowd was repeating Chcemy być ZOMO. It sounds almost the same, but it means we want to beat militia. We want to kill militia. It sounds almost the same, you know, that's a kind of joke, but it was not a joke. The young people at that time understood it very, very literally. The number of different actions against militia was increasing from month to month. I was talking that the new wave, it was the new clothing, yeah? Look how Mr. Hodis, who was the leader of Perfect, is clothed on this video. Of course, artist who is singing half naked, of course, it's the same like in American different concerts, but in Europe it's not possible, especially in Poland. Artists should be dressed somehow, well dressed, okay, but not naked. And now I will show you the same concert several years later in a club. You will see how people are shouting this text. That was 6-7 years later. For 10 years, this song was #1 for young people. Rzucam, chcę wychodzić, na klatce stoi, często się boi, nawet odkłonić, miotły ściskam dłoni. Orlabią szary, chwytam za pary i przerażonej twarzy krzyczę prosto w nos. Chciałbym być sobą jeszcze. Chciałbym być sobą wreszcie. Okay. Somehow, and then example number 3. Example number 3, it's a typical punk ensemble. Ensemble named Deserter. Deserter, it means somebody who is escaping from army. Look, that is the cover of the long play, which was published underground illegally. And of course, it was copied on different cassettes. This crowd who are dressed in different uniforms, they are scout uniforms, they are soldier uniforms, but all of them have the gas mask on the faces. And the text, it's not a Polish text, by the way. That's the text based on the English lyrics. The text is Ask Policeman. Ask Policeman, which is very unusual because nobody asked policemen in Poland because everybody was escaping seeing policemen. And what we should ask policemen, according to this song, ask the militiaman, he will tell you the truth. Ask the militiaman, he will show you the way. Ask the militiaman because how to become a perfect, manly, beautiful, strong. So they are philosophical questions. How to be a good man. You never ask militiaman about this. So it was an irony. It was a great joke. And this song was really something for only young generation. Nobody over 40 was singing this, but everybody heard this text. Ask the militiamen.
Która droga życia według prawa i porządku doprowadzi mnie do przejścia i zawszechnych obowiązków. Spytaj milicjanta, on ci nawet powie. Spytaj milicjanta, on ci wskaże drogę. On ci wskaże drogę.
If you know this subculture, you know that the dance they are dancing is called pogo. It's a very brutal dance, and very often it makes struggle. And there are people hurt during pogo, and that was something which was popular for young generation. So gradual increase of the role of this third circulation, it was proportional to the commercialization of different styles. Firstly, main pop, then rock, and then even pogo, so different kind of punk. Of course, young generation was the first generation to listen to this, but of course not only one. And it showed something very important. During socialist time, everything was fixed. Politic, for example, must have the white shirt and a tie. Artists should be well dressed. They were not well dressed. They were colorful. They were different. They have this typical haircut. Yeah, you know this. Maybe you remember the colors of the rainbow was used very often. And slogans which appeared in different songs were taken from these songs, were the slogans to struggle against politics. There were also something directed to, let's say, intellectuals. There were musical bards, people who have the smaller attitude, usually guitar and song, nothing else. The text was very important. The melody was not so important, but they were also sung during the demonstrations and during Gdańsk riots or other factory riots in Poland. There were many of them. We should mention Jacek Kaczmarski, who popularized the song Mury, walls. Basically, the melody of these walls is taken from the Spain, but also hunting, manhunt, obława. That's, by the way, a song from Russia. Also, our group, our class, Nasza Klasa, very popular songs, very popular texts, which also show the same. We don't need to live with the old style. I'd like only to remind one other bard, one other poet, singer and guitar player, who was Leszek Wójtowicz. Leszek Wójtowicz is still active. He is active in Piwnica pod Baranami, but his song Moja Litania of 81 was officially named during the festival in Opole. But there was a kind of a dream. What other trick will you pull on me? He's talking to Poland. He's talking to motherland. I want to be here because that is my place. So there were different programs for young people to destroy everything and for older people to change the place we are living. Listen, just a fragment of this.
Jaki jeszcze numer mi wytniesz, w którą ślepą skierujesz ulicę? Ile razy palce sobie przytnę, nim się wreszcie klamki uchwycę, by otworzyć drzwi do Twego serca, które przeszło już tyle zawałów, czy nikogo więcej nie obudzą w Twym imieniu oddane wystrzały. Nie pragnę wcale, byś była wielka, zbrojna po zęby od morza do morza, i nie chcę także, by Cię uważano za perłę świata i wybrankę Boga. Chcę tylko domu w Twoich granicach, bez lokatorów stukających w ściany.
The text which was sung at the moment was, I want only a home within the borders of you. And I want not to have neighbors who are all the time knocking at the door. Well, everybody understood it, of course. Everybody understood it that we want to be self-service without Soviet troops knocking our doors. Okay. Just instead of summary, my intention was to show and to prove that culture made a very important role in changing the world, especially in Poland and in Central Europe. And this culture was mainly music. Why? Because music gives opportunity to change text very easily. You can have one stanza which is officially recognized or typical one or traditional one, and the second stanza which have the text which is anti-regime or which says something important about the future. The second, we had something like, let's say, music journalism. Many texts sung by these bards, by other people, were kind of newspaper articles, but they were directed to people, to their hearts, to their brains. And something very important for mass culture, quotes or refrains or together, which could be hummed, which could be sung, which could be repeated by everybody in tram, in, I don't know, on a street. They were a kind of cultural code. And this code was very easy to be recognized among people. Many of these songs are well known till our time. There were 3 generations past. But some of these songs are still songs which could be found in different lists of the greatest hits of the end of 20th century in Poland. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for your brilliant presentation, as always. As always, I think that we would have some questions. Please, if you have some questions from audience. Okay, please.
Is there a debate regarding language choice in rock music?
No, because the same time when the new culture appeared, American culture in 80s, in 70s, the new generation start talking English. And that's till now. For a young generation at the moment, speaking English and speaking Polish is almost the same. I'm talking about these active people, not about these people who are sitting at home doing nothing. So there was no problem. Of course, in Poland, we sang in Polish, but the same songs sometimes have double version. And if the Polish troupe was singing in Poland, was singing in Polish. When he or she was going to other country, to Czech, for example, to DDR, Eastern Germany, they've been singing in English. So the barrier of language was rather in Poland because older generation in 80s, 90s couldn't know English so well. They know mostly German because of war, not Polish, or Russian because of school. But even the greatest hits of the Russian bards, I'm talking about, for example, Vysotsky, were translated into Polish because we didn't like this Russian. There was the not quite well received to speak in Russian. That's the same like in Ukraine at the moment. They understand Ukrainians understand Russian very well. But some you ask, okay, speak English, not a Russian, not because they don't understand Russian, because they don't want to listen to Russian. So the same situation, of course, not the same scale was in Poland, but it was the same process.
Thank you very much. Any questions from audience? If you have questions, or I will ask some questions.
Thank you.
Okay, so you mentioned big beat, as you called it, this style, Polish style, big beat. You have said that it had a significant impact on Polish political transformation during Solidarity era. So, to what extent could you? To what extent could youth music in other post-Soviet countries have had a similar effect? And my second question is about pop music has a significant influence on contemporary culture. And do you think that this phenomenon is related to solely development of mass culture in 60s? Or could a similar phenomenon have been observed earlier in Poland?
Oh, thank you for both questions, but there are questions to establish two new conferences, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Maybe the first one will be shorter. In Poland, we use the term big beat, what means the strong beat, yeah? For rock music. Why? Because that censor didn't like name rock. Rock was forbidden. There was on list. So if you have written rock, it means that you had to exchange it somehow. So they used term big beat. And this term means exactly the same, like a popular rock in America, in England, or in other countries, which were popular for this formation, for this style. The text at the very beginning were very simple. They were mostly love. Yeah, I like you, you like me, we love each other, and that was enough to have the song. Yeah? Like the same songs, listen to the Beatles songs, especially the younger one, the older one. They are very stupid sometimes. But step by step, the text was acquiring new areas. And the areas of for example, what would we do in future? We will have I don't know, meat and tomatoes. That's the first answer. And the second answer would be, we must create a better life. And when we create a better life, no, it's anti-regime, of course. But as long as censorship didn't understand that is danger for them, people were using this path for new topics. And then there was the second and third circuit I was talking about. Songs especially devoted to proclaim the new plan for New Poland, for new plan for new future. If somebody says to you that they were people who believed in collapsing Soviet Union, it's not right. Don't believe them. Nobody believed so. We believe that we can change it somehow, that we can slightly change our life, not to destroy. So what was going down in 90s, at the beginning of 21st century, what was a great surprise for everybody. And then we comes to the second question. How music, why I'm not talking about, I don't know, the Polish school of composers, about Penderecki, Lutosławski, and so on, Kilar, and many other composers. They were also composing pieces connected with history. Especially Penderecki was perfectly connected with different elements of the Polish contemporary history. But the influence of this music was very limited. According to different statistics, about 10%, 15% of the society knows something about so-called philharmonic music. Nobody else answer correctly for question, for example, who was the composer of the first Polish opera? Penderecki. It's of course stupid. Polish opera appeared in 18th century. So, but Penderecki's only name people know. So I think that sometimes we have exactly the same procedures. By the end of 18th century, we had exactly the same situation, like, for example, in England in 17th century. People were going to the opera, were listening to opera, listening the best fragments of this opera, for example, from the Miki Majcha, yeah, or John Pepusch. And then they've been making the new text. And the text was about that Prince so-and-so, it's a bad person. And this way started the greatest riots in London, in Paris, in Warsaw, in many other countries. So I am not sure if musical culture is not one of the most important factors to change the situation, the history of at least Europe. I am not specialist of what was going on in New Zealand, for example. But in Europe, you can find many things like this. I was once on a conference in Serbia, and they've been telling exactly the same. There was a radio, I think Radio 80 or something like this, and they've been giving different songs. And it started the Great Revolution in Serbia. Not every revolution is successful, of course. In Serbia, for example, in Georgia, for example. But the mechanisms of influence, the culture, musical culture, literature, also paintings, plakat, for example, advertisement, the role of advertisement, it's huge. So, Vansa, I recommend maybe to listen about the topic for a good conference, how music is changing the world.
Great topic, really great topic. And I want to comment something. Now I know the origin of our Georgian First National Party. So after ruination of Soviet Union, we had only one Georgian National Party, and the title was Round Table Free Georgia. So now I know the origin of this word, Round Table. So it was very popular party and the only party and supported by population and so on. And and now I was listening carefully, and if we replace names, surnames, and some events into Georgian names, we can see that too many similarities in this period. The same processes in Georgia in the 70s, 80s. So the same role of rock musicians, the same role of pop musicians, the same dress code, the same. You said that text was very important. The same in Georgia. Also, we had Georgian rock, Georgian language rock. It was very important for use and reflected all events, what was happening in Georgia. So I found too many parallels between our countries, and that is because it was the same regime, so socialist countries. So that's why the same processes occurred. Thank you very much. And do we have any questions from audience?
For invitation, and thank you for your patience.
And any questions from audience, if we have them? Okay, in this case, we have to announce a short